Man, how about the Indiana Hoosiers going into the Rose Bowl and absolutely smacking around the UCLA Bruins? This performance in Pasadena by Indiana really shouldn't be surprising to a lot of people, considering what we've seen on tape from both of these teams so far. Like for Indiana, they have been explosive, they have been highly efficient, and their defense, of course, has been very good as well. It's been a very balanced football team. Now, a lot of people have said, hey, look at who they've played. They played FIU, and they've played one of the worst FCS teams out there in the Leathernecks of Western Illinois. Okay? I get that. I understand that. And then you look at now this UCLA team and what they were able to do early in the season. Now, they only had one game because they had a bye week after week one, but they went out onto the islands in Hawaii, and their offensive line got pushed around by the Rainbow Warriors. Up front, Ethan Garbers turned the football over and was inefficient. Okay, so you take those two data points and you mix them together, and I think it's more of the same really for both teams. But we're certainly focused on the Indiana Hoosiers in this particular commentary. I think what most impresses me the most about Indiana football is just the mindset that Curt Cignetti has brought with him. And he's had this mindset at all of the places that he has been to throughout his coaching career. You know, the thing, you look at him on the sidelines, right? And he's always like that. You know, he's always got that face, that never satisfied mindset, and that never satisfied attitude I think is what keeps this program and this team building and improving and looking so impressive week after week after week. It's almost that Nick Saban mindset. Of course, he was the recruiting coordinator under Nick Saban for a little bit, right? That rat poison type of mindset where he's going to use anything to be able to keep this team motivated. You look at his halftime interviews with some of these reporters, and he's always finding something for this Indiana football team, regardless of how good they've looked. Because, of course, there's that 2020 team, the 2019 team at Indiana were very good as well. But he's always looking for something. And that's, I think, what really good head coaches do, especially when you have a team that, I know there's a lot of James Madison transfers that have stepped up a level, that is having some success. Sometimes you don't know how these 18 to 21-year-olds are really going to react to it. So you've got to step up as the leader of the program and say, yeah, you guys, you got a lot to work on. And I love that mindset, and I love that attitude right off the top of the football program right now for Indiana. Oh, let's talk about offense, because I think that's the flashy thing, that's the sexy thing that we want to talk about for Indiana. And it has been very flashy, and it has been very sexy so far, right? I think it's one of the best offenses right now in the Big Ten. And you looked at preseason, right? You thought if you had a healthy Kurtis Rourke, okay, he's got a big arm, and he showed it at Ohio in the MAC, although at a lower level, that he can push the football down the field. And then you look at the weapons that they had. I said that they were top 5 at the wide receiver position coming into this season. And now you look at this team that is 6th in the Big Ten in passing offense. They're 4th in the Big Ten in rushing offense. You look at them running the football right now. They're very balanced with who they rotate in and out of this room, with Justice Ellison, Tyson Lawton, Elijah Green. All 3 of those guys have 3 rushing touchdowns. We've seen Kalen Black as well, who came over from James Madison as well. I almost think the unsung hero right now of Indiana football is this offensive line. Okay, and once again, this really shouldn't be very surprising to a lot of people that Indiana is having the success that they are up front. This is an offensive line that suffered a season-ending injury on the O-line, and that was a concern. But this line is coached, I think, by one of the best Big Ten offensive line coaches that we've had here in the past handful of years, decades or whatever, Bob Bostad, the former offensive line coach for the Wisconsin Badgers, where he was able to pump out and develop NFL offensive lineman after NFL offensive lineman. He was a holdover from Tom Allen's coaching staff. And Kurtis Rourke, clean, very white jersey at the end of the day, right, against the UCLA Bruins. He's been very clean so far. They've been able to establish a push in the run game, okay, and that was maybe a little bit of a question mark coming into this season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Okay, could this offensive line to perform? We know all about the skill positions. Could this offensive line hold up their end of the bargain? They wore down UCLA. They punched the Bruins in the mouth, and it was a lot of hands on hips, certainly towards the end of that game for the UCLA Bruins. I think the thing that impresses me the most about Kurtis Rourke is how smart he is, and about how cerebral he is, and about how comfortable he is in this offense. And I think a lot of it has to do with what I just said up front of the offensive line. Certainly give him time to go through all of his progressions, and he knows every situation at hand, right? He sees an edge rusher kind of climbing up, an extra guy. He knows he's got to get rid of the football quickly, right? He knows in every situation where he has to go with the football. That's the vibe I got from Kurtis Rourke so far. And he's got confidence in his weapons, and he's got confidence in his ability. He has a very strong arm, right? He can push the ball down the field in the short, the medium, and the deep passing concepts. And he has weapons that can be successful in the short, the medium, and the deep passing concepts. They can hit every level of the route tree. They can dominate every level of the route tree. And when this offense gets efficient and they build confidence early, like I think that's another thing. When I looked at this game against UCLA, they took the ball right away and they got into a rhythm very early in this game, and they were able to establish that confidence, and it was almost game over when they went up 14-0 here against the UCLA Bruins. So Kurtis Rourke's confidence and comfort in this offense is one thing that really stands out to me so far through 3 games for the Indiana Hoosiers. And then these weapons: Elijah Surratt, Miles Cross, Omar Cooper, Zach Horton, Keyshawn Williams had a couple of touchdown catches, and Donovan McCulley was back in this game, but he didn't really get involved a lot. Donovan McCulley, the leading receiver from last year's team. Now you get him involved, and then that's just another weapon that you can add on here for the Indiana Hoosiers as well. So you take down all of that, you break down all of it, right? And you take all of these data points and what they've been able to do. Of course, this is an extremely impressive win at UCLA, the way they manhandled the Bruins. But I think the question that everybody wants to know: is this Indiana team the real deal? In order to answer that, I want to pull up Indiana's schedule for the remainder of this season, right? They've gotten off to a 3-0 start. Now let's kind of shrink this schedule in those first 3 games on this remaining schedule, the remaining games here on this slate for the Indiana Hoosiers. All right, the remaining 9 games, 8 of them conference games. Charlotte, you feel very comfortable about that. Now, here's the thing about Charlotte and why this is kind of a good draw for Indiana right now to not have a Big Ten conference game. D'Angelo Pons, right, their top defensive back, and a great defensive lineman in C.J. West, both got ejected with targeting penalties, so they're going to miss the first half of this game against the 49ers. So it's good to maybe have a lesser opponent and maybe not a Big Ten opponent in that game, so you don't feel the losses of those guys. But you get Maryland at home, okay, and that's, I think, the game out of those next 3 games where if they're going to go 5-1, if there's going to be a loss in there, it's probably going to be against Maryland. Boy, that game could go up and down and up and down and up and down the field. That one could be very, very entertaining as well. But look at those next 3 games: Charlotte, Maryland at home, and at Northwestern. Considering the way that Indiana has played so far, I think right now, I think they're the Vegas favorite in all 3 of those games, which tells you what? That they are the Vegas favorite, so to speak, to be 6-0 when they when they host the Nebraska Cornhuskers, I should say. This is an upset I had at the beginning of the season. I had, I think, Indiana. I think I had them 4-2, if I remember correctly. But at 6-0, Nebraska at home. The week after this, Nebraska goes to Ohio State, so they could be looking ahead in Bloomington. That place, the Rock. Yeah, the Rock could be rocking for that specific matchup. But you look at some of these matchups down the schedule: Maryland, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan. So Michigan on November 9th. If Michigan continues to have some of these issues and Indiana continues to build some confidence here down the stretch, I've seen stranger things happen. That's all I'm going to say. All of a sudden, that's a pretty darn competitive matchup if things maybe continue at their trajectory and the trend that they are currently going right now. I think that's a winnable game. I think it can be a winnable game for the Indiana Hoosiers. Ohio State, to me, when I look at this schedule up and down, I think Ohio State is the only game where I'm like, yep, that's a guaranteed L. There are paths to victory against Michigan. There is a path to victory against Nebraska. Both of those games are in Bloomington, Indiana. Michigan State on the road, that's a rivalry game, right? We'll see where Michigan State is at that point in time. But you look up and down the schedule, and we said at the beginning of the season, this was a very favorable schedule for the Indiana Hoosiers. 8-4, 9-3, certainly not off the table for Indiana. If we go further, I think I need to see a little bit more to really dive into a double-digit wins. But right now, if they can beat Maryland and go 6-0, like if they're 6-0 by the time they play Nebraska, a loss to Nebraska, Michigan, and Ohio State, 9-3 is very doable. I am very high on the Indiana Hoosiers right now. I was very high on them to begin the season because of just what Curt Cignetti has done with this football program. I've maybe undersold them a little bit, right, at 6-6 to begin the season. If I'm an Indiana fan, I'm looking at that 7-9 win range right now. I really am. I think I'm that confident in this team, and it's early, and I think they're going to be able to improve as this season really progresses as well. If you're a Hoosier fan, you should be very excited about what's to come for the remainder of this season.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.